Welcome back to the Kimchi Redneck's Kitchen. We are cooking stuff.
With these things.
So, one of my particular favorite dishes is curry. Specifically Asian / Japanese / Korean / whatever you want to call it, curry.
So basically what you're saying is you like the curry that the English stole from India, took over to Japan and Japan made it Japanese curry, and then Japan brought it to Korea.
At least that's what the internet tells us. So this is another Frankenstein recipe. We are going to put links to the 2 original recipes that we stole most of it from, which was from a channel called CHEF'S LABO, and one of our particular favorites in Korea, one called MeatMan.
We love watching MeatMan.
MeatMan makes some good stuff, by the way.
MeatMan inspired us, and then you saw the CHEF'S LABO one later. So MeatMan started this.
Yeah. So from what we can tell, the major variation between what most people know as a Japanese curry and a Korean curry is that A, the Korean curry tends to be a little thicker.
And have a few more spices.
In it. And depending on what you read on the internet, it may or may not have Korean pear in it. We're going with because that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, we love Korean pear.
So, we got a menagerie of ingredients here. The most important, and one thing I did not know until I started researching this recipe, is onions. I did not know that the curry base that you get, those brown blocks you get in a box from the grocery store, are like 90% onion. That was amazing to me because the only thing I knew that was that much onion was French onion soup. It's mainly cooked down onions with some other stuff added to it. Secret to curry.
From scratch does still include using curry powder.
Yeah. In fact, 2 different kinds of curry powder. And some recipes will even still include that little boxed curry base, which makes no sense because if you're making the base, why are you adding extra base? But then again, I remember sometimes you add bouillon cubes to stock to make it taste stronger, so True. It's kind of the same concept. We're going to try it without the extra. What do we got? We got onions, we got Korean apple and pear, mushrooms, Korean carrot, one of my favorite things. A little bit of potato, which is not really in the original recipe, but I like to have some potato chunks in my curry.
The king of flavor.
Beef.
You skipped the king of flavor.
Little MSG in case we need it.
Now we have beef. That's not the king of flavor.
Uncle beef. Some various seasonings. At points in this recipe, we will need butter, Worcestershire sauce, and that is a name for that, is Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce. It's not Worcestershire.
Worcestershire sauce, whatever you want to call it.
Or it's used to call it Worcestershire sauce.
Alright, so we've got caraway, we've got star anise, we've got an Indian curry powder that has most of what's in the Japanese curry powder that one of the recipes uses. Cumin, garam masala, salt, pepper, fennel seed, bay leaf, peppercorn.
That's garlic and ginger. We got some flour, because you're supposed to brown the beef, so we need some flour to dredge it in. And we went a little authentic. We went out and we got a little kombu in Japanese, or dashita in Korean, which is dried seaweed. We are not eating this.
No.
You soak that in a bowl. The instructions say anywhere from 1 hour to overnight. We kind of forgot to look at the instructions last night, so we're closer to the 2-hour range at the moment. But you just soak that, give it a good stir. Depending on your recipe and your tolerance for seaweed, you may cook it into the broth, or you may just strain it out and take the liquid, which is what we're going to do.
A few moments later.
Alright, so first thing we've done, aside from making a little more mess on the counter here, is we've cut the apple and the pear in, well, technically it's a little more than half, but we're going to throw those in a bag. Those go in the pot. And then I cut the beef into about 2 to 3 inch chunks, because it's going to sit in the pot and cook for a while, so you don't want it too small.
While he's doing that, I'm going to put a teaspoon of our black peppercorns in our bag, 1 star anise.
3 bay leaves.
And I'm going to put probably about half a teaspoon of fennel in there.
Sounds good. We're adding a couple extra things on the fly, by the way. We forgot to mention before that you need garlic for the thing, and we got some green onions we're going to add in there as well, because green onions in Korean broth is just how you do it.
5 cloves of garlic, and that's everything for the bag.
So I'd say grab 3 or 4 of those. And one thing I found over the years about Korean produce is I don't think they use quite the same blend of agricultural additives that we do in the States. So while a lot of their stuff tastes better when you get it, it also tends to degrade a bit faster. So try not to buy more than 2 or 3 days out in advance because the stuff tends to go bad after about 4 or 5. We have a soup bag in the pot ready to go there. We've got our soaked kombu, which will go into that at some point.
The water will.
Yes. Or not the kombu, just the kombu water. We're turning the fire on the pan here. We got our chunks of beef ready. We're going to do a really light flour dredge. We've got our, what was it, 42 ounces, 46 ounces?
46.
46 ounces of kombu broth. I tell you, those bowls are defective. They have spigots and they still roll down the
No,
bowl.
it's the way that I was angling the bowl.
I think they're defective. So I'm going to put about, so it's about 3 tablespoons or so, 3 or 4 tablespoons of oil in this pan. And I've got it over about a medium-low fire. We don't want to burn the hell out of it. We just want to brown it. For some reason, I think that's going to need more water.
I kind of think so. We lost maybe 2 ounces.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking the kombu broth, I think, is supposed to mix with additional water. You know, the idiot who Frankensteined this recipe together didn't do a real good job. So I missed a few things. So we're kind of fixing it on the fly.
He was not as thorough in his Frankensteining of his recipe as I was in mine.
Well, I was also at work, so. All right, after a quick tag out, we have gone to the mobile kitchen cam. See that beautiful beef brownness.
That black shirt turned white.
So we're going to get these browned up and then set to the side to settle the room temperature before we add them to this pot. Sound like a plan?
It's the plan.
All right.
So we're going to put the beef in. I'm just going to try and place it around the bag for right now to see how much space we actually have. Our bag does take up quite a bit of space.
We probably could have used a slightly bigger pot, but I chose this one, so it's my fault. Looks like we may need to add just a little bit of water to bring it up to the tippy tops. We're going to add a little hot water to that, and we should be good to go to the next step. All right, so there we are. We've added maybe, what, cup and a half of water, maybe?
About a half a cup.
All right. To bring our water level up, bring it to a boil, and then we'll watch it simmer and get to the next bits. All right, so we're back in the kitchen here. It's been about 45 minutes. Our stock is simmering. We got to get ready for the actual cooking part of the cooking. So we've got about 5 ounces or about half a carrot, Korean carrot, over here. And we've got our Asian pear or our Korean pear and our apple that are going to get ground up because that gets cooked into the onions later on. Before we cook the onions though, we have to cook the vegetables that were going to go in the curry because we like chunks in our curry. Now one of the recipes that we're stealing from did like this, where you chop up all your stuff and you kind of sweat it, stir fry it, and then set it to the side and then mix it all together at the end. The other one did kind of the same thing. He doesn't cook the meat into his stock, and then he takes one of those little hand frappers and blends all the vegetables together into the curry to make a smooth curry. I don't like smooth curry, I like a chunky curry, so we're going that way. So, first thing we're going to do, cutting this carrot. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there is a way of cutting carrots, or I guess pretty much any sort of long stick-like vegetable. It's called I think it's called an asymmetric cut, where basically it looks like you're cutting into chunks. You're going to hold your carrot at about like a 45-degree angle, and then cut like that. Turn it about 90 degrees, and you keep turning and cutting like that, and you come up with these oddly shaped little vegetables or little vegetable cuts, but they're all roughly the same size, so they will all cook at roughly the same speed, so it works in a curry. That, and then everything doesn't look cookie cutter all the same, like everybody's worried about the aesthetics of your chopped vegetables in your curry.
Well, I'm just grinding.
But I saw it somewhere and I thought it looked cool, so I'm doing it that way. As you get toward the end of the carrot, where you've got a little nub, it gets a little more difficult to hold it in that position. You may have to angle your knife more and your carrot less. Or you can give up and cut it in half and do it that way. Alright, put all this in there. We got potatoes. Cut them up too. I find it easier to cut one end of the potato off and cut it flat, and it makes it easier to line all my stuff up. And then we wind up with chunks of potato about the same size as the carrot, which are a little harder to get a hold of because they're moist. And mushrooms. So I'm gonna grab a damp cloth and we're gonna dab those because you never wash mushrooms because they're like sponges and they'll just soak it up. And then I'm going to slice those into bits and I'll be right back. Now that I've chopped a bunch of onions, my eyes burn.
He has cried for a little bit.
We are going to move on to the sweating of the vegetables. And no, that doesn't mean I'm going to sweat on the vegetables. That's an actual cooking term. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to bring the pan up to temperature a little bit. Check my notes.
A few moments later.
This isn't even technically a vegetable. It's a fungus. There's a fungus among us. Dad jokes for the win. Wow. All right, get a little more heat. Still about a medium. Check my fire. All right. I'm gonna let them start warming a bit more. All right. So, little salt. Got a new toy, got a pepper grinder.
It grinds itself. You don't have to worry about doing anything. I
And
like
you get
that.
fresh peppercorn. All right, that's about the point I should have remembered. I need a.
So we're going to take a look at the stock. Looks pretty good. Smells pretty good. We've already skimmed it. We'll be out of paper plates when this is over.
Yeah.
Trixie, I'm trying to help in the kitchen, so I'm going to use all your paper plates now.
At least you don't have to wash those. I mean, I'm trying to help.
And next we'll put in the potatoes and carrots.
Yes. And much the same thing, salt and pepper to taste. So, I'm pretty sure most people know how to brown carrots and potatoes, so we're going to skip this part. We'll get back when we're on to the onions. Potatoes and carrots have been browned, not cooked all the way through, but, you know, translucent around the edges, a little brown on them. Just good enough to go into the stew when it's ready. We have a menagerie of stuff ready here. We got our onions.
There's our carrot, apple,
Oh,
carrot
those are
mix.
great, yeah. So once these cook down to a certain point, we add our grated fruit and stuff in there. Cooks down a little more. You add your Worcestershire and your Worcestershire and your Worcestershire sauce, and your ketchup and all your stuff together, and your butter. When you cook it down, you let it thick, then you got some flour to congeal it all together. We've done a video in the past, you know, one of these corners over here. You can just go buy this stuff. It's pretty much the same stuff. It's what we're making, but we're doing it from scratch just because.
For reasons.
For reasons. So now, we got pan and fire, another healthy glug of canola oil from Canada. Always use something like canola oil or grapeseed oil when you're cooking with high temperatures, because you don't want to get that smoky, burny smell in your house too much.
Also, be very alert of what type of pan you're using there, because a pan with a thicker bottom like that one can take a little bit more time to heat up, whereas a smaller one, less time.
Ooh, listen to that. Now, several of the recipes that we looked at, including the two that we're mainly stealing from, warn you, do not stir this too much. You're going to have the idea you want to stir it like it's a stir fry. Let it sit for a minute or two, and then you toss it. You want to get it brown. You want to get it caramelized or caramelized and cook it down. So we're going to add a little bit of salt.
And this is only half of our onions. We've got another half that's still got to go too.
Yeah, once this starts to cook down a little bit, we'll add the other half and mix it together, and then we will be back when it's time to start adding other stuff.
A few moments later.
Look at that.
It smells oniony up in here.
Oh yeah. And there's not even any butter in it, it's just like onion and a little bit of salt and that hot oil smell from like
A little bit of pepper too.
well, a little salt and pepper.
All right, so we're going to keep cooking these down, but I wanted to give you a status shot.
Yeah, we gotta wait till they get a little more brown and a little more reduced before we start adding stuff.
So we will be back.
All right, so our onions are getting down to the point where you can see they're turning nice dark brown. When they start getting kind of wilty and mushy and turning brown, you kind of got to keep stirring them because they will stick to the pan. So, what we're going to do right now, we're going to add a little bit of oil in the center there. We're going to add ginger and garlic. And that, we're going to let cook on the heat of the pan for a few seconds until it starts to get good and fragrant, and then we're going to mix it into everything. Alright, so we're going to mix that in. The next bit, which is a good thing because we're starting to need a little bit of liquid, is going to be our grated carrot, sagwa, and bay, which is apple and pear. So, we're
definitely going to provide some liquid.
We're going to fold this in. I say that as I try to stir it instead of fold it. That should be good and folded. Now, while we still got a little liquid in here, we'll start adding our powders.
All right, so
Curry powder mix. We got some Otogi brand mild curry mix. Calls for about a half a pack of this. All right, what's next? We got regular curry powder. All right, that was about a teaspoon, tablespoon.
Tablespoon.
Cumin powder?
a third of a tablespoon.
All right, so
Garam masala, is that next?
should be. Yeah.
That's going to be half of
All right, good enough.
pinch of caraway seed.
Get back to the folding. It suddenly smells very curry in here. So like I said, this part right here, you see where the onions they're really getting thick and they're coming together? This is what forms that curry base that you buy from the store. And as Melissa was saying earlier, there's probably somebody out on the internet who doesn't like onions but likes curry, who now has had his life forever ruined. Butter. Butter. 2.8 to 3 ounces. However close you can get with your measuring equipment. I'm going to get this softened up and melted, and then we're going to also add in ketchup.
Which is 1.6 ounces. That's why I gave you the spatula, or told you to grab the spatula.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Your wife is not a bad sous chef, because she's not a bad chef, right?
Yep.
And now you need your Rooster sauce.
Worcestershire sauce.
I love saying that wrong just because it irritates the piss out of him.
That's enough liquid that it's kind of thinned it out some, allowed it to spread, but you can also see it.
It's definitely forming a paste.
You've got to keep stirring and scraping the bottom. It's starting to
It's trying to stick.
come together in my pot. Curry. We're getting there. All right.
Are you ready for flour?
Let's go to flour. All right, so we're going to do this in stages because we don't know if the amount of flour that's in the recipe included the flour for the dredge at the beginning. So I'm going to add about that much and start stirring. Oh yeah, look at that thicken up. Look at that thicken up. That's ugly beautiful right there. I'll turn that off. I think we're there. That looks like, look at that. That's turning smooth. That looks like.
And if you wanted to like smooth it out more, you could get your handheld blender out, mix it up, and get those onions broke down a little bit more if that's what you choose.
So I'm gonna turn the fire off. Since this is a good heavy bottom pan,
It's gonna hold heat for a
I'm
while.
gonna let the residual heat finish doing. We're gonna move some stuff around, and we're gonna get back over to the pot because it's about time to start combining stuff.
Woo!
So we've pulled our stock bag and everything out of the broth and our chunks of beef, which I could have cut down to smaller in the beginning, but they're just
falling apart. So basically that apple and pear worked really hard to tenderize that meat, because that was the job of the apple and the pear. It does provide some flavor, but
well, that and smell good.
well, yeah.
We gotta shred our meat here real quick. We're gonna get this shredded up, and then we're gonna get to mixing everything up and putting it on for its final simmer. First off,
Another look at that.
yes, as, well, not chefs, but people who cook, we have tasted our stuff to see how it was. Our broth was a little strong in the onion flavor and a little weak in the beef flavor.
So we added some MSG.
We added a
pinch
pinch of MSG and a little bit of beef bouillon, and that is now up to snuff. We have tasted the beef. Actually, we tasted the beef first. That's why we tasted the broth, and a little weak on the beef flavor. But now, hopefully, once we put them all together, that will work. And this stuff is magnificent. I tasted it straight, and this is like onion marmalade, or
And curry marmalade.
yeah, curry onion marmalade. I would spread this on toast. I'd eat it with a spoon. Excellent.
All right, so let's start putting stuff together. What's the next step, Chuck?
So, we'll turn our heat up a little bit here. We're going to bring this back up to a simmer, which it's still warm. All right, so we are going to...
Add our paste to our broth,
Yes.
and then mix the two, right?
Yeah. We're going to dissolve all that oniony goodness right into this broth. Now, at this point, once you get this all broken up and cooked into the sauce, if you taste it and you think it's not curry enough, you can get ye old box of curry and
Add a cube.
add it in there. That's coming to a nice curry texture there. A little watery, but it's got
to cook for a while.
it's gonna thicken up a little bit. Where's my spoon? Let's check this. I think because the curry powder we added was an actual like Indian curry powder, it's added a little bit of like Indian curry flavor to it, but it's got a nice zest.
I'm not mad at that.
It's got that curry flavor. It's got a little bit of lemony, citrusy bite to it, but you can also taste that apple and that pear in it, that little underlying sweetness. That pile of deliciously tender beef. And then our browns. There's one that's slightly more than browned, but onions are potatoes and carrots.
You know that I like char on my veg, so I don't think I'm going to complain about that.
Mix that in there, and then shrimp. Those are relatively thick cut, so hopefully they will stand up to sitting in the pot for a few. What?
Are we bringing this back up to a boil and then letting it simmer?
Yeah, you bring it just back up to a boil, and then you're going to let it simmer for, depending on the recipe, 15 to 30 minutes. So we're going to shoot for 20 and see how that comes out. All right, so here we are back at our table, and we have had bowls of relatively fancy-looking curry. I decided to try a little hard.
All right, so I'm going to mix a little bit of rice, a little bit of curry, mix a little bit of beef.
That's smooth. So after we cooked it for about 30 minutes, or simmered it for about 30 minutes, which you got to remember to stir it every 5 minutes or so, because this thickness will settle to the bottom and then it'll start to burn, and that's no good. But after it simmered for about half an hour, we turned it off and just let it sit and let it coagulate and firm up and get its goodness. And goodness it is.
That's really good.
It's creamy and smooth, yet you got that little bit of Indian curry flavor from that spice mix we had. But you also got the sweetness from that apple and the pear.
And of course there's the onion.
Oh yeah, and onion. Onion is one of the most contradictory foods in the world. If you try and eat it raw, it'll sting your eyes out. But if you cook it for a few minutes, it becomes buttery and smooth and sweet. Is going through all the effort of making this yourself better than just using the box mixed? Technically, yes.
Yeah, it is.
If you want to get the full range of flavor and the little things that you can change, if you want to use chicken bones in your stock, make a chicken stock instead of a beef stock. If you want to do a different curry powder instead of an Indian one, you get more of
the Japanese one like MeatMan uses.
Yeah, and you can like flex it to however you like it. Now, on the other hand, this did take us most of a day to cook.
And we're both tired.
Relatively tired, yeah. So if you're looking for something that you can make in like an hour or two,
This is not your recipe.
this is not your recipe. You want the stuff in the box, it's probably 80% as good. It's a whole lot easier.
75% is good.
But this is good, and this is fresh. Tomorrow, this stuff is going to be magnificent.
Liquid gold. It's a good mushroom.
Very good. Yeah, I really don't know what else I can say about this one, guys. This is just, if you take the time to cook this down and let it simmer and let it mix,
You're not going to regret it.
this is magnificent.
That potato just melted in my mouth.
So, we
We're going to eat, so go away.
are going to sit here and marinate ourselves in this curry. Y'all have fun. We'll see you next time. Like, subscribe, internet stuff, all that normal jazz.